Patriots Playbook. La, la, la.
And welcome into the Patriots Playbook as we wrap up the 2024 regular season here in 2025. John Rook, Evan Lazar is here. He's working double duty today.
Always.
After he and Barth, go through their Catch-22 episodes,
yeah.
right?
We've been arguing like that for 10 years.
I know you have. I know you have. I think it's great that you can bring your arguments, and share them with everybody else, right?
Our text messages.
It's
the same.
You might as well make some money off the thing, right?
Yeah.
I kind of understand that.
Yeah.
So what's new? I mean,
absolutely nothing.
Nothing new today over what we talked about yesterday. There's a bunch of different things that I think we really need to kind of get into today. Not the least of which would be the fact that Jerod Mayo, while he's no longer the head coach, why did it happen?
Yeah.
How did we all sort of fall into this, and that includes the Crafts too. And I thought what Mr. Kraft said earlier this week on Monday that it was warranted, it was truthful, it was well done. He did what he had to do as the person who shepherds over the entire franchise and the organization. But you can't tell me that over the last month he didn't see things, going well. Okay, well, we've kind of seen that, I think, for longer. I'm really wondering when this really became a possibility, when this really, kind of came into his mindset. What was there pressure from sponsors? Was there pressure from fans? Was there pressure, internally in the locker room? I mean, did he hear from? There has to be a little bit of something, almost from almost any aspect you look at it. I'm going to tell you, in all honesty, my thought here. Okay, my opinion alone. We'll go ahead and we'll stand that out right now.
Yeah, put that out there.
Right now. My opinion alone is that this probably germinated a year ago when Mike Vrabel was inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a possibility. And you look at the way the situation went down. Is it possible that this was truly a one-year trial run with Jerod Mayo to see if he was ready and see if he was up for it? And if he was, great. If he wasn't, then here we are. Yeah. That's definitely a possibility. I think one of the things that Jerod said early on, and then I should know, but it was one of the broadcasts, CBS or Fox, whichever station the game was on, 1 week, kind of said something along these lines too. He kept on referencing around the time of the combine, around the time of owners meetings, when he was made available to the media during those periods, right, that he was drinking from a fire hose, that it was coming at him really, really fast early on. And I think when he got the job, he had a lot of ideas. He had a lot of things that he wanted to try to implement. And then all of a sudden, he got in the seat and things just started moving 100 miles an hour. And I think what ended up happening was that the breadth of the job was a lot bigger than maybe he anticipated. And when you get into it and then things start to slip through the cracks, right? You're not able to focus as much on the defense, or you're not able to focus as much on building out the infrastructure of your program and how you want to build the football program, and you're not able to do all those things because you're doing your game planning, or you're planning the week, or you're planning the off-season stuff, or whatever the case may be. And I think what ultimately happened is that it was a little bit too soon. It was a little bit too big for him.
Yeah.
And he ended up sinking in the deep end of the pool a little bit. And to that point, I thought Mr. Kraft's comments that it was his own fault for putting him in that position were very commendable and accountable.
Poignant and I think believable.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody disagreed with anything he had to say. They wanted him to sort of fall on the sword. He did. It's his franchise. It's his team. He's responsible. He's at the head of all of this. And then I also would guess that, Jerod is an easy guy to like. He's a personable guy. He was that way as a player.
Yeah.
You ever, listen to him in the locker room, and he was the studious one out on the field. I mean, he's had several of his, former one-time Patriots teammates call him, to borrow the phrase, Belichickian on the field because of the way he mimicked what the coach wanted him to do at the time. So they appreciated his style and his no-nonsense approach. And I think he got caught up a little bit. And again, my own observation in this particular instance, I think he got caught up a little bit in trying to be all things to everybody without necessarily concentrating on being what this franchise and this team really needed right now. And I also think Mr. Kraft might have fallen into that a little bit because of, you talked about, the impression that Jerod left on him when they took that trip to Israel back in 2019 and how much of an impact that had on him on getting to know who Jerod was as a person, and as a man of faith and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's significant. And I understand how that can turn someone's opinion. But the job of head coach in the National Football League is a unique job. There's just really few other jobs like it on the planet, unless you want to count, like, I don't know, President of the United States, maybe, or leader of a country, or Prime Minister, or whatever you want to say, because you have to go back and forth between being everything that everybody wants and being nothing that anybody wants.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to be all things to everybody, but then again, sometimes you got to bang, put your foot down and say, guys, this is the way it is. I'm ultimately responsible. We're going to ride with it this way, to get people to see your point of view, because, yes, you paid a lot of money, but B, it's on you. If it doesn't work, you're ultimately going to pay for it with your job, and that's obviously what happened to Jerod. He was, probably always will be, a player's coach, right?
Yeah.
He was a player. He understands it. He gets it. He knows the answers that players need to hear for them to be successful. So he was trying to be that, and at the same time, you need gruff Bill.
Yeah, you need discipline.
Yeah, you need discipline. We saw that throughout this entire year. More than anything else, Evan, more than anything else, the one thing that overwhelmingly disappointed me in the New England Patriots for 2024 was their lack of attention to detail.
Yeah.
The lack of discipline. The same mistakes made in week 1 and 2 as they were made in weeks 15 and 16. That's just inexcusable.
Yeah.
So that, disparate characteristic is what really stood out to me more than anything else. And the only way to fix this, and I opined about this in the Providence Journal. I do a column every Sunday in the Providence Journal. But I opined about this and just saying, look, the only way to fix this is by just, you got to wipe the deck clean, and you got to kind of start over. Mr. Kraft is a billionaire for a reason, because he knows how to hire people, he knows how to when to fire people, he knows how to run his businesses successfully. But I don't think he's been treating the Patriots like he's been treating any of his other businesses. And so he has to go back and be a businessman first and find the right people to run the business of football. And I don't think Jerod was doing that, and I think that in itself is the problem.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I agree with. I just think you look at the lack of upward trajectory from the team from the start of the season to the end of the season, and I thought Mr. Kraft mentioned that the highlight of the season was week 1.
Yeah.
That was the best performance that they had all year, was the first week of the season. So when you say that, you're supposed to be at some point showing signs of turning a corner. Now, they have all sorts of issues on this roster in terms of talent that we're going to talk about over the next couple months as we get into free agency and the draft, and we all know that. But still, if you're getting good coaching for the players that are here and the players that were on the team, then there should have been at least signs and flashes of improvement.
Yeah, right.
And the fact that those flashes never came was putting us in a tough spot of, us asking ourselves here on the shows, what is he bringing to the table? Like, what is a Jerod Mayo characteristic that's a positive that he's bringing to the football team? And it was tough to find one there at the end. It was really tough to find one. So we talked about this on Catch 22. The big part of this hire to me is getting somebody that can run the entire program, not just coach the team, but you have to understand how to build out a football program and how you're going to handle the offseason and how you're going to handle training camp and OTAs and mini camp and preseason and then, game plan and how the week is going to go and all this type of stuff. I think Jerod had a lot of ideas, and I think he had difficulty putting those ideas into practice, and that's why the team kind of came apart the way that it did, and it felt like a lot of the time that he was flying by the seat of his pants. One day it'd be one thing, another day it would be something else.
Yeah.
The last thing I would just mention with Jerod I believe that if he had handled his business off the field, press conferences, messaging, media, and the team was handling business in that respect as well, that he might have gotten a second year anyways. Because patience is often something that is not a big deal in the NFL. I don't feel like we are patient enough in this league at times with coaches. So I think that if it was just the football on the field, they could have justified, okay, well, we knew this was a multi-year rebuild. We know the roster is really far away. We know that he wasn't going to be able to implement all of his philosophies in one off season and one season. Let's give him a second year. But the run-ins that he had publicly with his messaging was a big issue, I believe. The soft comment, the "you said it, not me," the "burn some cash," the walkbacks that he had to do.
Yeah, the walkbacks were huge. I think we could all see that, he probably shouldn't have said that. And it takes a little more, what I would call media savvy, in order to be able to, avoid those pitfalls. And while Jerod is very personal and looks and sounds good on television very well, like a professional should, there are some things that you only learn with experience and time.
Yeah, so
wisdom.
He's a really great personality. He's
Yep.
a really great guy.
Yep.
And unfortunately, as the head coach of a football team, you have to be a different version of yourself in front of the camera.
Yep.
And I think he tried to be Jerod Mayo, the one that he is behind the scenes, the ball buster, the jokester, the friend. And I think he tried to do that with the media, and like the media tends to do, it went the wrong way. And that's if you avoid those little slip ups, and you were clean throughout the entire season in terms of that kind of stuff, I think we might be having a different conversation.
Yeah, and I do think that for a long while as we got into the season that this was still Jerod's job.
Yeah.
But I know, as I said earlier, I think the germination of this whole, well, maybe Vrabel, if something happens here, that started when we had that, Mike Vrabel love-in when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And granted, look, we all fell for it. Yeah. I thought then, my own personal self, and I hosted the ceremony, my own personal self thought, wow, I think that there's, that could happen. I could see him replacing Bill Belichick at some point because Bill Belichick was still the coach.
Yeah.
He hadn't been fired yet. I could see that. And you know how I knew that? Because he slipped at halftime.
Yeah.
Mike Vrabel slipped at halftime when he was inducted that weekend. And he said, I'm going to cut my time short here. I'm paraphrasing. I'm going to cut my time short here because we have a game to play.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
We?
Yeah.
Who's this we?
Well,
he was the head coach of the Tennessee Titans at the moment.
Well, I think if you ask people down there in Nashville, they would tell you
that might have also had something to do with his ouster.
Yeah. I don't think ownership down in Tennessee was too thrilled about that.
No, it's what I'm saying.
Yeah, or the fact that he sat in the box with the Crafts the entire game and rubbed elbows either. But I look at this entire thing, and what you learn from it and what you see from it. And in terms of when it happened, when that turn happened, I still think it was in season, but I think there were rumblings from reports, this isn't coming from me, people were reporting at the time that some people were starting to get antennas up about this doesn't feel right, this doesn't look right. And the Crafts know what it looks like, Parcells, even Pete Carroll had some success, Belichick, like they know what it looks like when you're running a successful football team.
And we didn't see any of that.
We didn't see any of that. And I would say if you had to put an actual date on it, somewhere in October, maybe around the London trip.
Yeah.
And then certainly what happened in London and the result of that game against a bad Jaguars team.
I would agree.
I would say that was when we started to hear some of the things about the discipline off the field, the soft comment in the press conference after the game in London.
Yeah.
The results on the field weren't good.
Right.
I think that would be where I would earmark it.
Yeah, I would agree. All right. All that being said, we're going to push forward here, but I thought I thought we needed to sort of revisit that because Jerod was a popular player here. He was a, relatively popular choice when he was named to replace Bill a year ago. there were a lot of people rooting for Jerod because there are a lot of people in the media business that worked with Jerod since he spent a short time in the media working mostly for NBC Sports Boston before he, jumped back into coaching. And so there are a lot of people personally rooting for the guy. We're rooting for the guy. And I do hope that he's able to find a way to land on his feet. I'm not sure how or when that's going to happen, but that's not for us to judge, and that's for, another day. We want to make sure that you guys know right off the bat that the phones are open for you. I'd really like to hear your thoughts and opinions if you care to share them with us on, who you think the next coach should be and why you think they should be the next coach. And Evan and I are getting ready to jump into that here in just a couple of moments. TPX hotline, of course, is 855-PATS-500, 855-PATS-500, toll free. You can also send me an email, podcasts@patriots.com, or hit me up on X at JR Broadcaster is the X handle. And different ways that you can kind of jump into the show here. We'll also remind you, Patriots fans, if you want to see Toyota's best offers, including those not seen on TV, go to buyatoyota.com. It's Toyota's official website for deals from the official vehicle of the New England Patriots, Toyota. Let's go places. And, of course, Bud Light is easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light is the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. I want to know what you think, primarily, about who should be the next coach. We're going to run through the obvious candidates, maybe some of the not-so-obvious candidates. I think we should also revisit just a little bit to kind of see where we are in the overall scheme of things, what Black Monday hath wrought on the NFL. There's only 6 jobs open right now.
Yeah.
And that's actually 1 or 2, maybe fewer than I thought may be open.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering what that might signal. We're going to jump into that with Evan. Karen Guregian from MassLive.com. She's going to join us as well. Many of you know Karen is a longtime Patriots columnist and beat reporter for the Boston Herald and now MassLive.com. She's going to join us as well. And Russell Baxter will be along, give us his thoughts on the Black Monday changes and also the playoffs coming up starting this weekend as well. So that's how we'll rock and roll in our final edition of the playbook for this particular season. To begin with, because she's been hanging on for a while, Justine is in North Carolina. I'm going to make sure I got this working here, Justine. I want to bring Justine into the show. Hi, Justine. You're in the playbook. Justina.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Good thing I'm not working, 'cause I've been on it for a while. My biggest thing is, first of all, I just want to say my heart is broken. I love Mayo. I think that he was really smart, like everyone is saying. He was quick on his feet.
Yeah.
In responding, the thing I really am afraid of is that he may not have had control of the offensive coordinating decisions and defensive decisions. Why I think that is because the first week he kept saying, I think that May was playing very well, that the May was playing good, and he, it was a good competition. All of a sudden, either he's playing well, whose decision was it? And I don't think it was Mayo's. I think someone else, whether it be Elliott or Elliott didn't let him have control or the Kraft. That decision was not Mayo's, because I believe if it was, he would have been playing. And all of a sudden, it was like a shock to everyone that he was going to play Jacoby. And obviously, Jacoby is AVP's got Van Pelt's favorite, and AVP is Elliott's favorite. Okay. And I think the next person they need to get is an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator that can be adjustable, that be innovative, and be able to make adjustments if needed, and a coach that can recognize if those things are not made, like from if they're losing and they need to make a quick adjustment, that they need to have a coach that's able to recognize that they're not being made and be able to step up and have control.
Mm-hmm.
And and I was wondering why. For two questions: if they're not if they're so up on Vrabel and Johnson, why have they interviewed Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich? And another question is, has anybody checked on Drake and how is he doing?
Okay. I think you're. First of all, I think there are a lot of people that agree with everything that you had to say. I also believe that as someone who's probably been a fan as long as the team as you have been, Justina, that you probably also realize that oftentimes when business decisions come into play, there are a lot of things that don't seem right or don't seem fair or might even seem cruel. And maybe that was partly the case here. But I would tell you that anybody who has a job in the NFL understands that they've got to put on their big boy pants, so to speak, and that you are kind of hired to be fired ultimately here. I mean, heck, if you can hire the greatest coach to have ever coached, in the National Football League, and then and then let him go, you can let anybody go. So I don't think that fairness or what was right or wrong concerning Jerod, really, I don't know if that's a factor. Clearly it wasn't, because if you were going to go just on fairness, I would tend to agree with you. I'm not sure that this was entirely fair, but that's not what this business is about. So let me ask you this. Let's turn it around a little bit. Of the people that have been talked about, should it be a fait accompli that this is Mike Vrabel's job, or would you like to see one or two other people get serious consideration to come in and kind of steer this ship? And what I think we can all agree upon is that this is a critical juncture in the Patriots' history. What do you think?
Vrabel, whoever you have to have control of the team. Offensive, defensive. At first, I thought it was Mayo's fault that he didn't take control of his offensive defense. And then after finding out that these people, that the offensive and defensive were actually Elliott's people, I had questions how much control he had. Whoever comes in has to have control over the people are making the plays, calling the plays. I think the biggest problem that the Patriots had this year was play calling. It was just awful. It was not on point, and it was not sufficient. I think they need to that's more important right now than this outstanding, experienced coach. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, Ev?
Yeah, no, I think it's a lot of good points. In terms of control, I think the big thing for Jerod was just his lack of experience, and they were trying to put people in positions that could support him, that he could kind of be the CEO, overseer of this football team, and allow these other people that he hired and they hired to coach their sides of the ball. And because he didn't necessarily have the expertise, I'm not saying he doesn't know football. I'm just saying, is Jerod Mayo fully qualified to make a call on a rookie quarterback and when the rookie quarterback is ready to play in an NFL game? Mm-hmm. Probably not. I mean, he was a linebacker. He was a position coach on the defensive side of the ball, and he was a co-defensive coordinator, basically is how I would label it, with Steve, towards the end there before he became the head coach. So he openly admitted at times that he didn't know much about offensive football and was really leaning heavily on Alex Van Pelt and Ben McAdoo to make those kinds of decisions. And I was a pro start Drake May week 1 guy. So
was I.
I was.
As you know.
But in hindsight, it might have been the one decision that they made right. Him getting drafted was probably the best decision that regime made, period. But in terms of in-season decisions, not throwing Drake out there until he was 110% ready, and also shortening his season so he wasn't thrown into a 17-game season as a rookie behind that offensive line and this supporting cast, it might have been the right move. It probably was the right move. So I can't really – I hear what Justina's saying in terms of having that control and making sure the buck stops with the head coach. But whoever made that decision was probably – the wiser for it. I think that was probably the right move. Now your hope is moving forward that you hire a head coach that has the expertise and the chops to make these decisions without having to worry about the coordinators making the call there.
And so does that mean now that really when we're discussing candidates to move forward from this point, that we need somebody that kind of checks off boxes? And while Ben Johnson, and we've talked about him over the course of this year as well, certainly seems like to be the hot commodity in the NFL, and he's undoubtedly going to get more interviews after he gets one, we believe, here on Friday of this week. Does it seem like, though, that we need more than just the hot guy as a head coach here, somebody that's got to be able to handle things? Is Mike Vrabel, and that's why I asked the question, is he the fait accompli here because of all the boxes that this team needs checked off at this moment?
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at it, and we open Catch-22 with this. Right now they need to build a football program, like a sustainable football program from the front office on down. They need resources. They need infrastructure. They need people. They need to build out this football team in a way that they hadn't, frankly, done it with Bill, because Bill was this all-encompassing guy that could do 16 jobs at once. And I think what they realized once Bill walked out the building was just how much he was doing and how it's impossible for one guy to do as much as Bill was doing. So what I would hope, and maybe this isn't Ben Johnson, I like Ben Johnson for other reasons, but whoever they bring in next to be the true decision maker in the football program here, they need to come with an audit and a plan of this is what this team needs to get back to running like a well-oiled machine. It's not just the X's and O's. It's not just the locker room. It's not just the personnel. It's getting back to a point where they're making the right steps to get to the good stuff.
Yeah.
And right now they got to lay it brick by brick, right from the bottom up to get back to that point. I'll just give you one example. The Patriots still are way behind on times in terms of analytics and scouting. I'm not talking about win probability models and fourth down decisions and in-game stuff, but in terms of implementing analytics into their scouting philosophy, teams that are doing that, the Chiefs, the Lions, the Eagles, the Buffalo Bills, these teams have massive analytics departments.
Right.
The Patriots don't. And these are the types of things that somebody has to come in, and Bill didn't need analytics. Ernie Adams didn't need analytics. They had it all up here, right? Like they were able to just do it like that, but not a lot of people can.
True. Justina, thank you for taking the time today. I really appreciate you.
Thanks, Justina.
Thank you, Lauren.
You got it. All right. Let's get Todd also in North Carolina. Something about the state of North Carolina today. Hey, Todd, what's up, man?
Yeah, just driving behind the semi, hoping he's not going to break randomly again.
Well, I hope it's not Eldred.
You never know. Now, Eldred's way better than this guy. He's changed lanes 3 times without signaling and, cut 2 people off. So that ain't Eldred.
All right, be careful, brother. What are your thoughts on the next coach? Who should it be and why?
Vrabel, and I don't care what Evan says. I want Vrabel, and I want Vrabel to keep AVP because I think he was growing into his role. Like you said, you know him on a personal level, and he's wicked smart, as you say in Boston. I think he grew. I think he grew throughout the year, and to see what he did with both young rookie quarterbacks tells me there's a lot there. I didn't believe you when you said that they should unleash the beast with AVP, but I think that's something that, they should look into. What do you say, John?
I mean, yeah. It's hard for me to disagree with any of that. I think what they need is somebody who can put their foot down when they need to put their foot down. I think they need somebody who can understand what a player's needs are, like Jerod, I think, did pretty well. But at the same time, I think you need somebody who says, hey, it's my way or the highway, and if you don't like it, hey, drop and give me 50. I don't know. I don't know if they had that with Jerod because, again, as reporters, we're not privy to a lot of that inside stuff.
Yeah.
We only get to see the first 15 minutes of practice, so we don't really know what gets said. We can only surmise.
What the players said to us,
Yeah.
and what the players said to us wasn't always really in line with what you think a coach would allow his players to say. So my feeling on that whole matter is it's just, he seemed to play favorites. Sometimes Ramondre was out for fumbling. Sometimes he was right back in. It was a big mess, John.
It was a big mess.
Blame Mayo.
It was a big mess.
Blame Mayo.
Absolutely. And I think this is ultimately why the change is being made, because there was a lot of back and forth, and there was some, for lack of a better phrase here, wishy-washiness. There was, going back on things, backtracking, if you want to call it that. Yeah. There was some of that, and you can't do that. That's the one thing that Bill did so incredibly well. Yeah. And why he was able to kind of, we're on to Cincinnati, which is going to stand in my mind basically from now until the end of time, because he was able to just shut all that out. And even though you knew we had to ask questions, you also knew what his answer was going to be. You still had to ask the question. Jerod was trying to do it from the other side, and I think we determined why Bill was a lot of the way he was, because you just can't you can't blame both sides.
Well, and I think Vrabel won't do that either. I've looked back at some of his stuff when he was with Tennessee, and some of he's acerbic, he's kind of rotten, but he's not going to put up with the BS, right? He's just not.
No.
And he's going to get, I don't expect him to put pads on there and be, whacking people in practice and all the other, hype that he did. But
I wouldn't be surprised at that.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if he got out there and ran with those guys.
Oh, he's going to put the shells on. And
he's going to put the shells on. And, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see that, because I still feel like –
shrewd to me now.
Yeah.
Like he's making shrewd moves. You listen to what he's saying now, and he too has evolved, right? He has grown from what he was. And I think
I don't think that's a bad thing.
No. That's why I think I would like AVP to stay here, and I think you got something there, and allow him to kind of do some mentoring. I think you can grow those guys together. I think we'd have a really good start. I have no idea who you're going to get as a DC. That's my big fear. I don't know. I know Vrabel will have a big hand in it, but I don't know what's available even.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely think that Alex Van Pelt deserves a sit-down, deserves an interview. I know it's a weird interview for the job you currently have, but when they eventually do hire a head coach, assuming it's Vrabel, if it's Ben Johnson, it's Ben Johnson's show, and that's a separate conversation. But if they hire Vrabel, then I would definitely have Vrabel meet with Alex Van Pelt and see if their philosophies could align. He did a great job with both quarterbacks. There's no doubt about that. There's more to coordinating an offense than just coaching quarterbacks. You got to be able to design plays. You got to be able to call plays. You got to be able to, make up for weaknesses on your roster and cover up weaknesses and game plan and understand all those different types of elements. And he is a great quarterbacks coach. No doubt about that, but there's more to the job than that. So can they do better? Can they do better in terms of those other things? Because he's not the only guy that can teach a quarterback how to drop back pass, right? Like he's not the only guy that can rep footwork with a quarterback. So we'll see. We'll see what. That's the number one question I have with Vrabel. Just leaving you with this. I think it's twofold with Vrabel. One, the ceiling of his program is a question that I have. I think they kind of, what's the word? They kind of overachieved a little bit in Tennessee, and then they kind of plateaued. Yeah. And then it went down again.
Right.
What's his ceiling? His ceiling in Tennessee was a AFC Championship game appearance. Not a win, not a Super Bowl, an appearance.
Right.
So can we get over that hump? Maybe Drake May does get you over that hump on his own because he's better than Ryan Tannehill. That's the hope. But that's my fear. And then obviously who's running the offense? Who's coordinating? I'm not worried about the defense. Mike will have the defense. He'll figure that out. Offensively, who's coordinating the offense? Who's developing Drake May in years 2, 3, 4, 5? And how do we go from there? That's the biggest thing. But he's a great coach. But the problem that I have with him a little bit is just that side of the ball. He's not an offensive guy. So now you're doing this whole thing again where you're hiring a coordinator and hoping and trusting that the coordinator is going to put you in the right position. So,
all right, we're going to continue with the phone calls. The TPX hotline open and available to you. 855-PATS-500 is that toll-free number. Karen Guregian, obviously, as many of you know, she's been a...
I'm gonna bounce. But
you're going to bounce?
I'm going to say hi to Karen. Hello,
okay.
Karen.
Hold on. Yeah, there we go. All right, so now you can say hi. There he goes. Thank you, Ev. Appreciate you. Thank you. Yep. Ev's still got work to do around here. Karen, as you know, has covered this football team for a long time, currently with MassLive.com, a good friend of this program as well. And, Karen, we thank you for spending just a couple of minutes with us here today. And I'd really love to know what your opinion is of what we've seen transpire over the course of the last really now 72 hours. Were you surprised that the move to make the change happened as quickly as it did in the aftermath of the game on Sunday? And what do you think was the turning point for him?
Well, I was surprised at the swiftness of it. I mean, I thought that might happen on Monday, the day after.
Right.
But the swiftness of it, the fact that, an announcement or Robert had already, wrote something up and we had a release and, tells me that this has been in the works. It wasn't just a last minute thing. And I wrote immediately after it happened that they had to have a plan in mind. I don't think that they were just doing it haphazardly or just to be quick.
Right.
And I wrote that Mike Vrabel had to be the object of their affection because it just makes so much sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And I mentioned with Evan a little bit earlier that, in all honesty, I thought, if the love affair hadn't gotten, and I use that term somewhat loosely here, but if the love affair didn't get started beforehand, it certainly, I think, was in full display for everybody to see when Mike was inducted into the Patriots Hall of Fame. You could see the Mutual Admiration Society forming, and then, as I told Evan, the thing that put the light bulb on in my head, Karen, was, during the halftime ceremony when he said, "Hey, enough of me. We have a game to play here." And I'm just like, that could not have set well with the Tennessee Titans. And that's an entirely different issue, but it told me, I think, how Mike Vrabel feels about the Patriots and largely how the Patriots feel about Mike Vrabel. And I think that might have been the seed that initially got planted. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I was at that ceremony.
Yep.
With Dante Scarnecchia, and the things Bill said about him. I thought there. I didn't know if I thought something was brewing then because he was the coach of Tennessee, but you could see the genuine affection that Robert Kraft had for Vrabel. I think he sat up in the box with him, if I'm not mistaken. And, that halftime, some people didn't make that much of a big deal about it. But, if you read between the lines, you at least raise your eyebrows, right?
Yeah.
But Robert went with Jerod because it was written in the contract and he, acted, didn't want to go back on his word, I guess. But as we all saw, that turned out to be not the best thing for either the team or for Jerod, who had zero experience being a head coach and looked at much of the year, for the type of mistakes that he made, whether it was what he said after games in the heat of the moment or just in-game coaching decisions. Did he have a good roster to work with? No. he had a terrible roster to work with.
Yeah.
But I think, in listening to Robert too, on Monday, they expected more, maybe a few more wins, but not even wins. It was more about progress, and all Robert saw was regression. And good for him that he acknowledged, making the mistake. It was too soon for Jerod.
Right.
So now they have to move on and, try and get the rebuild back on track.
So how does this rebuild get back on track, Karen? First of all, is Vrabel the guy? I think we know that Ben Johnson is expected to get an interview as well this week, perhaps on Friday. They conducted two interviews, ostensibly by Zoom, phone, whatever it was, yesterday as well with two potential candidates. How many others would you think would be legitimate candidates? Are they viable candidates, or are we just kind of going through the motion here? And of course, this opens up a whole other can of worms, which I'm not sure that we really have the time or the wherewithal to get into. But let's just say, are you of the opinion it's a fait accompli that this is Mike Vrabel's job?
Yeah, as I said, I thought that the minute Jerod was fired.
Yeah, yeah.
And other factors tipping that off, Mike was out of his contract with Cleveland as a consultant. He interviewed with the Jets, and I'm sure, Robert Kraft is thinking, well, I let him go once last year. Am I going to let him go twice and then have to face him twice a year with the Jets? So I just think, I like Ben Johnson, but he the Detroit's offensive coordinator, but he poses the same issue as Jerod. He's never been a head coach. He might be an excellent head coach, but that unknown, I think, will possibly keep Robert away, and I think he sort of hinted as much that I think he's looking for someone with experience. And I just think Mike checks off so many boxes for them, whether it's experience, having a proven track record. He got to the AFC Championship game, didn't win, didn't do particularly well the last couple seasons in Tennessee. But again, if you look at their roster, he's never had a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for the Crafts and wanting someone who will at least get them back to respectability and not have the type of things, repeat mistakes, both from the players and from the coaching staff, just having a respectable product, I think Mike Vrabel will provide that.
Is Mike Vrabel the kind of guy, though, and we've heard this question asked already, Mike Vrabel the kind of guy that could potentially attract free agents, knowing that the Patriots have the biggest cap room in the offseason to bring guys in? Is he a kind of guy that could add to that or take away from that?
I don't think he'd take away from it. I think him being a known entity, and the fact, there's a quarterback there that excites people, that, not just fans, but he's excited, and a lot of these NFL analyst critics and former players watching him play. So I think having the quarterback, having the cap space, now having a more proven coach, and if they're going to spend the money, I think some free agents would think twice before, put it this way, they won't be as quick to go running somewhere else.
Okay. I would, you would hope that would be the case because personally, I believe, if money talks, players will walk nowadays, don't you?
Yeah, right. And also, if they see, again, something that's headed in the right direction. It was hard to know where they were headed with a first-year coach.
That's true.
Last year, and again, the worst roster in the NFL.
Well, and that certainly puts the onus, I think, and we can probably agree on this, puts the onus on Elliott Wolf and Lonzo Highsmith and everybody else that's a part of the the scouting staff to bring in those people. Elliott has also already said that hey, they missed on some of the rookies. They missed on some of the free agents. The development didn't happen where they hoped it would happen. And so he has to know that they're behind the 8 ball. He has to know that, hey, if we don't do our job, then, whoever replaces Jerod Mayo, whether it's Vrabel or somebody else, they can't do their job. And so really now it all boils down to, all right, what kind of a team is the next head coach really going to have? And there are, believe it or not, some unrestricted free agents on this team, and I don't think we need to go through all of them, but I'm wondering, based on your knowledge of what you've seen on the roster, are there guys good enough to bring back here? Some guys that are free agent types? Are there players that you'd like to see have another shot, depending on the coaching staff and who might, coach them up and have that ability? Or is this more of a chance of, hey, while we have the opportunity, I think we need to just get the broom out and start over?
Well, first off, I'm not 100% certain that Elliott Wolf will be making the final call on those things.
Okay.
Because, if let's say you hire Mike Vrabel, he's going to want to work with somebody he's comfortable with and comfortable making those type of decisions with. Somebody he's confident, has a good eye and feel for personnel. And if that's not Elliott Wolf, it shouldn't be Elliott Wolf. And Robert Kraft sort of alluded. I think Robert Kraft would like to keep Elliott Wolf on. He started to modernize how they rate draft eligible players. He just revamped their whole system and got them a little more modern. And I think the Krafts liked the change because during the Belichick run, their draft rankings were more based on fit. In other words, players that fit Bill's program, his scheme, the type of player that Bill was looking for,
right,
as opposed to other places or most places now whose draft boards are ranked according to best, who's the best, who they consider the top prospects on down. Fit is not in that mix. It's who are the best. And I think, you'd see over time they would miss players because of that type of system. It worked to a degree because Bill got players, he thought would fit in his defensive scheme or the offensive scheme or vice versa or whatever.
Right.
But sometimes those players just weren't good.
Yeah.
They might have been a fit, but they weren't good. And you might have been safer drafting the more talented receiver or whatever.
Yeah, the impression that I got is that they were looking for value. I don't know that we're at a stage where this roster is at a stage where value is of the utmost importance. You need guys who can play, period.
That's right.
Right? No matter what they cost, they got to play. And, whether or not you move down 3 or 4 spots and take another guy, I think you got to go get who you deem the guy to be, don't you?
Yep. Oh, totally agree. Yep.
2 names that I want to throw out at you. And I want to know if you're buying or selling. These are 2 free agents. that, I think you could certainly make a case on either way to come back and be a part of whatever team, the Patriots are going to have next year. One of them being Dietrich Wise, who's been a team captain. And the other one on the other side of the ball is Austin Hooper, who we saw turned out to be a pretty dependable receiver for the Patriots this last year. Would you buy or sell on those two free agents for next season?
I'd buy.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, before I got into my big dissertation about the draft board,
Right.
I was going to say Austin Hooper. He was a good presence, a good veteran presence, and in the scheme that they had, I mean, let's face it, the tight ends were the best receivers in this whole lot, and they established a rapport with Drake May, both Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper, and going into year two, if someone has a good rapport and chemistry with Drake May, you don't want to get rid of those guys. You want to keep those guys.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that stands strongly in favor of keeping Austin Hooper. And the other thing is, some of the veteran voices in the room, some people who have been around. I might even include John Jones in that group with Dietrich Wise, although I wouldn't, I don't think it's a total necessity. But, I mean, he understands what they're looking for.
Yeah.
He has a sense of what, a playoff team looks like. And so does Dietrich Wise. So you want to keep some of those guys aboard. Some of those guys who've been to the playoffs before, or in John Jones' case, has won Super Bowls before. Most of those players are no longer with the team.
Right. That's also true.
It's been a while.
Yep.
And you don't want to hang on to someone beyond their time. But I think John Jones can be serviceable. I think you want to get more cornerbacks, another cornerback perhaps, to pair with Christian Gonzalez.
Mm-hmm.
And, in terms of Dietrich Wise, I mean, he's been a good soldier. And he's a company man, as they were,
right.
as it were.
Sure.
And, again, I'm not keeping Dietrich Wise to be a starter. But, again, I'm keeping him to be a presence in the room. I
think that's a very good call. By the way, I want to add on Hooper. I believe he did play for Mike Vrabel at Tennessee, did he not?
I'd have to look that up. That might be right.
I think he did. I think
right.
he did 2 or 3 years ago now. So that being the case, that only would, I think, stand to benefit the relationship between the two. There will be some working knowledge there. All right, so Karen, do you expect, bottom line here, do you expect any shock and surprise? And if you think that there might be a curveball, and we'll mix sports metaphors here for a moment, where do you think that curveball comes from?
Well, the curveball would be coming from Las Vegas.
I'm glad you said that.
with Tom Brady pulling Mike away.
Yep.
I mean, it is. It's it's the ultimate wild card out there right now.
Right.
And if I'm the Patriots and Mike Vrabel's your man, you better move some mountains to make sure he doesn't leave.
See, I already thought that was part of the reason why he went and interviewed with the Jets, just to make sure that, hey, guys, I can't wait forever, and to kind of light a fire under some people around here before Jerod was let go. And now we find out that Tom Brady, he allegedly wanted to, throw the idea out to Bill Belichick about maybe coming and coaching in Vegas. But if not Belichick, it stands to reason that Mike Vrabel, because of their previous relationship, would be a superb candidate.
Yeah. What's funny? It's like, how is it that when going back to Bill, when Bill is like 2 steps, it first came out with UNC, and then when it got closer and closer and closer, like none of these teams were saying, "Hey, Bill."
Right.
And now all of a sudden, it's like, oh, everyone's now inquiring. Jeepers, where were you?
Well, I would tell you that I think this is partly due to number one, just where the NFL puts itself in the pantheon of sports. It's all NFL, all nothing, and nobody else exists. All right, so they don't think about others. Number one. Number two, when teams got word of what the buyout is for Bill Belichick in North Carolina, I mean, come on. If he lasts his buyout, if he lasts beyond June 1, his buyout is only $1 million. If he goes before June 1, it's $10 million.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're okay, you think you got things in place, but you got a team here that certainly needs some veteran leadership, why wouldn't you wait until after June 1 and then bring your coach in to kick some butt?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I doubt it happens. And I think people are genuinely surprised that Bill went to the college ranks. I was surprised.
Yeah.
I bet you were surprised. We were all surprised that he went. That tells me that he really wants to coach, and he wasn't sure where his opportunity was going to come about, and he still wants to coach. Great. Then go for it. I wish him luck, but I don't know. The Raiders' possibility is an intriguing fly on the wall right now, and be interesting.
It is.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
It is.
Yeah, how it turns out in the next few days anyway. Karen, thank you so much for being with us this season and in years past and all those lines. Your knowledge is greatly appreciated, I know, by the listeners to this program and to Patriots fans, to me personally. Thank you for your willingness to share some of that knowledge with us, and I hope to run into you again very, very soon.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, John. I always enjoy being on.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Karen Guregian, at K Guregian, Guregian, on X. If you're not following, you probably should. She's been doing it for 33, 35 years now, I believe. MassLive.com right now. That's where you can find all of her stuff. And she, is as smart as they come. As smart as they come when it comes to covering the NFL. 855-PATS-500. Podcasts at Patriots.com. I'm going to get to a couple of emails coming up in just a couple of moments. At JR Broadcaster on X. Russell Baxter will be along in a half an hour, so let's spend some time together. I threw out at the top of the show with Evan that there are several different things that we really need to kind of go through here, not the least of which is my number one question for you today is who should be the next coach and why? Because I think it's important we get fans to have their piece, to say their piece. You are the paying customers. You are the people who have invested themselves, your time, your money, your effort, whatever it may be, your fandom, into following the New England Patriots, the majority of you. I realize that there are some that are watching and listening today that, wouldn't necessarily be Patriot fans, but you might just be curious as to what's going on in New England, or, just a football fan and you want to talk some football, which is perfectly fine. All comers are welcome here. That's the big difference here. But at the same time, I think we all realize that, there's a definitive way of going about things, and I think the Patriots ownership and senior management, I think they've understood that. I think they've heard you throughout the course of the year, maybe also due to the dwindling attendance inside the stadium here. And they felt like, this was not going in the right direction that they hoped it would go with Jerod. And so they felt like, this is a business. Let's treat it like one. And you start at the top. And so they've done that. So now when you're going to replace the person at the top, who do you replace him with and why? That's number one. Number two, if you want to talk about, some of the, available free agents that could be re-signed by this team, we can jump into that as well. The Brady factor, the Raiders factor. I think that, what Karen and I were talking about right there at the very end, I think that also is likely going to sort of speed this process up a little bit. I would not be surprised in the least bit to see a head coach announced this weekend, first part of next week. Would not surprise me in the least bit. If it goes longer than that, then it tells me that they're actually going to do further vetting of potential candidates, which also could happen because we don't know what's going to be said in some of these interviews that are going to be coming up over the next couple of days. Or if it's done, by this weekend or next Monday, or maybe even sooner, who the hell knows anymore, right? Then I think we understand that, there was probably some pre-thought into making that move and getting this show back on the road here in Foxborough. All right, let's back to the phones here. 855-PATS 500. It is podcast at patriots.com on email, at JR Broadcaster on X. Patty in Agawam. You're up next in the playbook. Hey, Patty.
What's up, John?
How are you, bud?
Doing all right.
Good.
No complaints, man.
What are your thoughts?
How's the offseason?
Yeah.
My thoughts are I think the next coach should 100% be Mike Vrabel. Although I did call him Catch-22 earlier today and said I wouldn't be mad with either of the top two coaching candidates on the docket.
Yep.
But for me, it's got nothing to do with familiarity or anything like that. It's just, Mike Vrabel has done it before. I mean, you can argue whether or not he was really successful in Tennessee, but I mean, he took that team with Ryan Tannehill, gave him. Tannehill had a couple of the best years of his career, brought him to an AFC Championship game, and I don't know, man. Just what this team is really lacking for me, John, is not only direction but discipline. We saw that how many times in the past few years, even when Belichick was here, did we see stupid pre-snap penalties?
Yeah, well, we mentioned that off the top of the show today, and to me, that was the one thing that just galled me more than anything is that we're seeing issues that should have been cleaned up in training camp still rear their ugly head as late as the week 15, 16 in the regular season, and that should never happen, which tells me that there was no accountability, no bottom line. And then, of course, you can go into all kinds of things. We can really nitpick the hell out of this. And, in the whole, Ramondre Stevenson fumbling. And, I just, look, that was his style, okay? That's what he wanted to do. He was only doing what he wanted. Jerod wanted to do what he thought was in the best interest of the team. That's fine. That's his right if he's the head coach, okay? It didn't work. So when it doesn't work, can you shift? Can you change? Can you find a way to make a difference? Can you find a way to compromise? And I'm not sure that we could see that. That's why he's now no longer the head coach.
Yeah, and John, question for you: When did you start to feel like the tide was turning, or like the door was kind of closing on Jerod Mayo?
I kind of agreed with Evan on this one. Right about the London game. Right about the London game, because we were all sort of, I think, somewhat foolishly by the win over Cincinnati. It was a pleasant surprise. Nobody expected it, least of all the Bengals, because you can certainly make an argument that kept them out of the postseason this year, right?
I did call that one, John.
Yes, I think you did. I think you did here on this show, as a matter of fact.
I was the only one.
Yeah, well, I'm going to give you full credit. I'm glad you brought that up because I think I honestly believe that was a huge factor in their entire season. Who says September games don't matter in December? Okay? Because if you say that, you are wrong. That was a huge factor in how this season progressed because it also put us all in, I think, into a false sense of security. And so you could see that there was some dysfunction, and that's the best way to put it. There was some dysfunction, and there was some internal yapping, and it just wasn't I'm looking for a phrase here. It wasn't an environment conducive to success. How's that for generic? Okay, but it's true.
I like it.
Okay, and so you got to have everybody on the same page. I think we started getting guys on different pages about midseason, and I think that's about the time that Mr. Kraft referenced as well on Monday, and I think he was right about that. You hoped, but when you hope and you still don't see, then you have tough decisions to make, and that's inevitably what happened. I held out as long as I could, Patty. I held out as long as I could, hoping that Jerod would figure this out. And I think, there comes a time where sometimes when it's not going well, you got to define who you are. And I think Jerod kind of dug in his heels a little bit. And it's, look, I'm going to make it work this way because I know I can. And sometimes stubbornness gets involved here. And I'm not saying he's wrong for that. I can't say that I wouldn't do the same thing. You can't say you wouldn't do the same thing if you were given that opportunity and that position. You have to do it your way. Some people don't feel like compromise is within their purview. Okay, hey, you hired me to do this. I'm going to do it this way. If you want me to change, then we'll sit down and we'll have a talk about it. Maybe they had those talks. Maybe they didn't. We don't know because we're not privy to that information. One thing Jerod did say was that, he was in constant contact with ownership, throughout the entire season. And he was never led to believe that there was anything wrong. And I'm paraphrasing here, right? So, okay, if we take him at his word, I've got no reason not to in that regard, then I think the Crafts felt largely like I did, like we do. Hey, I really like you, Jerod. I want to see this work. I'm going to give you as much rope as I can. But at some point in time, if it doesn't work, we got to tie you up and send you out. And I think that's kind of what happened here, to be quite honest with you. So I would go, middle of the year is when I started to see it slip. And again, hopeful that it would change. Ultimately, it didn't, obviously.
Yeah, and for me, the comments after Lubman about the team being soft, that stuck out, but they came back and won the next week, and I was like, all right, well, maybe they responded, And listen, like you, I held out as long as I could.
Yeah. But
for me, it was after the bye when they just came out and looked lifeless and clueless for 2 out of those 3 games. And you know me, I'm old school. After week 16, I kind of knew what was going to happen against the Bills, But after 16 games, because to me that's like the real season.
Right.
Week 18 is just kind of garbage, and we saw that with the Week 18 games. But
sure,
I'd seen as much as I needed to see. I'm like, wow, 2 out of these last 3 games, they came out of the bye and just had no fight, and they didn't look like they wanted to be on the field at all.
Yep.
And as a team, you take on the identity of your coach, and they just looked listless. And at that moment, it was really the Arizona game. I just started questioning myself because I was fighting people online, give them a chance, it's only year 1, it's year 1 for everybody. But after that, I was like, oh God, maybe it's time to go, and just, the Chargers games kind of rubber stamped that for me.
True. And, the Chargers game, the Chargers game for sure. But I actually think that it had to have happened before that. Now, if they had turned around, it's tough to play what if, but if they had turned around and if they had whipped the Chargers rather than the Chargers thoroughly decimating them,
yeah, different story.
It might have been
100%.
It might have been. I mean, if it had been 40-7 the other way, yeah, it might have been.
I mean, because you look at the performance they put against Buffalo. I mean, they ended up blowing the game, but they were competitive.
Yeah.
And if they came out and kicked the Chargers' butts, I think that would have gotten this region very excited.
Yeah. One other thing, Patty, one other thing I'll share with you here. I understand why a lot of people would be upset over them winning the game against Buffalo last weekend because it cost them ultimately the number 1 overall draft pick. But I knew going in, and I've said this time and time again on this show, because you've listened to this show for a number of years, and so you understand where I'm coming from. Players play the game, okay? Yeah. Players don't think about tanking. Coaches don't think about tanking. And let me allow for this. if there was an inkling by anybody in that coaching staff that this might be their swan song, and I'm not sure there was, okay? But if there was no way in hell they were going to lose that game, okay? There's just no way in hell they're going to lose that game. So, look, yeah, believe me, the 1 pick is way better than the 4 because then you're dealing with a position of power, division of strength. You could, deal it for a bag of goods, other picks down the line, whatever. Sure, you're not going to get as much in return and value for the number 4 pick overall. But if you keep your pick and where the Patriots really need, they can get that at 4 just like they could have gotten it at 1, in trading down. I don't really see. The only thing they're missing is maybe an extra couple of mid-round picks out of this whole situation. I think they can still get who they want. I am a fan of 2 players. Evan is a fan of 2 players. If we're going to spin it even further forward, Abdul Carter, Kelvin Banks. Give me one of those. Give me both, and it's a grand slam. But give me one of those 2 guys. I'm a happy camper.
And I'll end it there, John, because I was just going to ask you, like, if you could come away with one, give me names of a couple guys you would like to walk away with. And I said to these guys on Catch 22 last week, I'd want a combination of one of these 2 guys, either Calvin Banks Jr. and Jack Sawyer with our second pick.
Yeah.
The DE out of Ohio State. He's an animal. You know?
Yep, I agree with you. I agree with you. These are all great names, and heck, we've got 4 months to really consider all of them, and I'm sure everybody will do their own due diligence on this. And I know Evan will look at a ton of tape, and it'll be interesting to see how this thing plays out.
And the other combo would be Abdul Carter and Josh Connolly Jr. But we still got the whole combine and.
Yeah, all that's going to happen. Oh, my favorite time of the year. We're watching men run around in tights.
All right, John. Good. Always good to talk to you, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.
When's the next time you're going to be on?
Appreciate you. Unsure at this moment, so we'll put it out in social media circles as soon as we know.
All right, I'll keep my eyes open, buddy.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you. Patty and Agawam. All right, let's stay on the phones. Our buddy Eldred in North Carolina. It's North Carolina's day today, man. How you feeling? You're a little under the weather, huh?
Yes, sir. I'm feeling a little bit better, a little bit stronger. How you doing today, Mr. Legend?
We're good. Everything's good. I appreciate you taking the time. I know that you'll answer this one, but I mean, is Vrabel? Does he have to be the guy? And if he has to be the guy, why does he have to be the guy?
I want Ben Johnson.
Okay.
I wanted him last year.
Yep.
But before we get there, I'm going to say, Mr. Kraft, I love you. Disappointed in you, because you knew this 5 years ago when you decided to make Jerod the assessor from Bill, and they divided the wall last year, and you know he's a first-time coach, this and that, but you still rolled with him. And you knew up and down, you said there's going to be up and down in the beginning and all this and that, and give him a chance. But understand, it's a business too, but you shouldn't have made that statement, and you shouldn't have put a first-time guy in a position like that. Johnson, reason why I want him, I love that offense for Detroit. And even though they're saying that he never ran a team before, well, he's been a coordinator more than what Jerod was.
Yep.
Been a tight end coach, offensive coordinator. Then he also ran plays, and he also knows, the parts about running a team. I think he learned from Campbell. And so with his, I'm like Evan, I want the tight leg this time. Grable, love Grable as a player. I didn't like him that much against Tennessee, especially when he whooped us that time in the playoff with Brady. but he got a floor, but I don't think the ceiling's that high either. Yes, he knew how to run a team. He did this, did that, whatever. And I think the Jets put it on the Kraft. Well, we lost him once. Maybe we got a chance to try not to lose him the second time. And that's why they got rid of Jerod. Besides going through what he was saying they're going to do the first time around. But I want Johnson. And then I want him to develop May, because I don't think Vrabel developed Tannehill all that well during the years he was there. He did okay, but he, could have been better.
Well, you can also make the argument, though, Tannehill doesn't have near the ability that Drake May has.
No, not not as quite, but remember now, Tannehill could run back then too. He
True.
couldn't throw good off the platform, but he could
True.
move and he could throw, you know. But he also had talent. And this is another thing that everybody keep overlooking. Jerod was hired the worst talent in the NFL, and still got it now. If you had Grable last year or Ben Johnson, would you be doing the same thing this year that you did to Mayo? Because you got the same compound roster.
Yeah.
And I don't like Wolf for that. And I don't care what everybody said. Well, this is his first year. No, heck no. He's been there 5 years plus one, and you got the same talent.
Mm-hmm.
And then he needs to be gone. Need somebody with some eye on talent that can draft. And I don't hear about the Packers away because I don't see nobody look like Dobbs or Watson or the other guy running around for Green Bay right now on our team now that he had a chance to draft, you know, this year. He would if he got A.D. Mitchell, and I'm still going to holler for that one. You know,
Yeah.
to get some better receivers.
Right.
And you still didn't address your left tackle or your right tackle.
Right.
You get a guy on the right side so where he can play the left side. Well, you've been doing that for 4 years. It ain't worked yet. When it going to sink in? And what you say, Mr. Legend, the form of incentive to keep doing the same thing twice with the same result? Did you say that?
I would, yeah, sure. I'll go along with that.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what he's doing. He's been doing it for the last 4 years.
Okay.
You know, so it's insanity. You know, I need somebody there with personnel expertise, and that will listen. You know, and just draft somebody right. And like that lady said from North Carolina, Carl, yeah, you got. I've been saying for 15 years though. You got to draft a guy sometime instead of his carbon copy.
Mm-hmm.
Because carbon copy is just nothing but a carbon copy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how I feel about it. I really have Ben Johnson. But
Okay.
if they go with Grable, I still wear my Patriots stuff around and still say, okay, we see what we do this year, and then the following year, you know.
Right.
But I rather have Johnson than have anybody else.
All right. I can understand your point. I get it. I get it entirely. I think that, I don't think anybody would be upset if Ben Johnson were to get the job. If he comes in and he blows everybody away, should he still have his interview this week, then I don't think anybody would be upset over that, because I think they would look at, wow, okay, so we got a, hot new young guy. The only issue here is, do we still have the same issues that really were at the forefront of what kept Jerod Mayo from succeeding, and that was overall experience, and potential, and potentially handling the media. We all know handling the media in New England and in Boston specifically is a much tougher job than it is in other areas of the NFL. It just is.
I agree with that, but I'm looking at McVay. I'm looking at Shanahan, and I'm looking at some other guys that came off like that. First time, and they did real good. They're still doing good now.
Mm-hmm.
The team's always in the running. The team's always in the playoffs.
Yep.
The team's going to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And they were first time coaches. And look at LaFleur, that's the one that escaped me, from Green Bay. He held on with Rodgers for a while, then he went on with his young quarterback, and look what they're doing now. So there's a host, there's a both sides on each thing, because one might be not experienced enough, but he might know enough,
Okay.
and surrounded by the right guys. And Elliott Wolf ain't the right darn guy. I'm sorry. Mr. Kraft need to get rid of him first. Then maybe Mayo.
Well, he's going to get his chance to bounce out of it. He's going to have a big chance to bounce out of it. He's got to. They have to hit. They have to hit on free agents. They got to hit on the draft. They got to hit on a lot of things. So you're talking about a guy who's coming up in a pinch hitting role, and not even a pinch hitting role, but again mixing sports metaphors as I love to do. You got a guy who's coming to the plate with the bases loaded and 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth. It's time to get a hit.
Well, sir, only hit he got, and that was an easy pick. That was May at 3, but I didn't want May. I wanted Pennick. But that's different. But I'm glad we got May. Love him because, like I said, I got my jersey. I wear it proudly now.
Attaboy.
But sir, I would have him pick a little league team for me, and that's being honest.
Eldred, I love it. I absolutely love it. My friend, you get well, all right? Get well soon.
Thank you, sir. You have a good one.
Stay in touch. You bet. The one and only Eldred in North Carolina. I've got an ex-post that got sent to me from our friend Mary Beth in Syracuse, who says, "Hey, it's able to see so much snow up here today. I'd like to see Vrabel back in Foxborough as head coach. He has had experience. Most important, need to get a team around Drake May, and I'm keeping Wise because of his experience and work ethic." Mary Beth, it's good to hear from you. I also have an email here from Aiden in California. And let me see if I can get that to work here because it's a little, just a little awkward here. Okay. Yeah, here we go. Aiden, John, man, I'm a bit perturbed. Okay, read. There we go. On how the Crafts are doing business. 3 coaches in 3 years is not a good way to do business. Did Mayo get put in the right position to succeed? No. But what bothers me more is if you fire Mayo, then clear house. Wolf had an interview, Henry McKenna, saying that development of players was the issue with the coaching staff. Well, if you can, John, jog my memory. Wasn't AVP Wolf's guy and recommended by him? I hope with the next guy we have will bring discipline to these young players because that's not talked about much. Coaches coach and players play. Sorry for the rant, but I'm Team Ben Johnson. Don't mind if Vrabel gets it. If you want to shoot for the moon, then shoot. And I think, based on what you're saying, Aiden, you kind of feel a little like Eldred in that particular instance. Shoot for the moon. Okay. Got that completely. All right, let's keep on the phones here. Jason is in Georgia. Hey, Jason, you're in the playbook.
Hey, first-time caller. Great for the opportunity here.
Thanks, Jason.
Just a couple points I want to make, and I'll take any comments off air. First point is that I think between Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel, it's kind of like reliable. You know what you get, and compared to the hot new thing, you don't know what you're getting. But we don't even know if Vrabel's ceiling was actually even peaked in Tennessee when it really comes down to it. But aside from that, also I like the idea of taking Vrabel just for the fact that it's the defensive mind I think we're lacking here. Even if Jerod Mayo was a defensive guy, he doesn't have the coaching experience. But I appreciate the opportunity, and like I said, I'll take it off the air.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate your time. I think that my major concern is that if it's a guy like Ben Johnson, then yeah, you're going to have an inexperience factor here. I think, though, that he would have an advantage, certainly, over Jerod in one aspect. If you're one of those like me that would be concerned with the experience factor. I don't think Elliot Wolf, I don't think Robert Kraft, I don't think Jonathan Kraft, I don't think anybody in team hierarchy here is going to allow whoever comes in, whether it's Ben Johnson or Mike Vrabel or anybody else, any other candidate that they will talk to. I don't think they're going to allow them to surround themselves with people who don't have definitive experience. By that, I would tell you, look, Alex Van Pelt, I think, did a commendable job this year. In full disclosure, I've known Alex since he was a high school quarterback. Covered him, we talked about this early in the year. Alex was a high school quarterback at San Antonio Churchill when I was working in television in San Antonio decades ago. So I've known Alex for a long time. So there's a little bit of knowledge there, and I always thought he was a smart guy, really smart guy. He was smart as a quarterback. Followed his career at Pitt. Followed his career as a solid backup in the NFL after he left Pittsburgh, and always thought that he could be coaching material. And I think he did a good job, a solid job, coaching up all of the Patriot quarterbacks, especially the young ones in May, and what we saw, of course, this past weekend from Joe Milton. I don't know that I'm sure whoever it is will likely at least talk to him before he leaves, because these coaches are still in place around here right now. Nobody else has been let go. Many of them will undoubtedly interview not only for their current jobs, but maybe for other jobs within the hierarchy, depending upon who is hired as the head coach. He's a guy that I think would, be great to keep around. And we talked about this a little bit earlier on the show today. But what does he want? It's different. What he would want is different from what we would want. question is does he, can he get the kind of job elsewhere that he wants? See, for instance, right now, I'm not sure Jerod can get that. He hasn't really had any coordinator experience per se, and I think that's ultimately what ended up damaging Jerod in the end, is because he came to the head coach without any real definitive coordinator experience even elsewhere in the NFL. And I think that was the big, pitfall that he just couldn't avoid. Can Alex Van Pelt, can DeMarcus Covenant, can those guys, can they get other work that's suitable for them? It's not our worry. But when you talk about bringing them back, they might be more willing to think about that simply because it might be more because of the way the team ended up, because of the team fortunes. I think that it is entirely probable that most of these guys on the staff will get interviews, and I think it's also probable that most of these people aren't going to be here for too much longer. The scouting staff may also be a part of that. Usually scouting staff stay in place through the draft. And I know whoever comes in as the head coach is going to want to have his own input as to who he's going to deal with from a player personnel or general manager perspective. They should have that. If you're going to put your butt on the line and your career and your livelihood on the line, you're going to want to have as much say as you can get. Now, maybe you can begin to understand just a little bit of why Bill Belichick was the way he was. Total control, because so much is expected of you. So you got to have some leeway in there. There's no real definitive answer to the question, but there's two different ways of looking at it. One with experience that can handle this stuff, and one without experience, bright, genius, young guy, that can come in and do the Sean McVay, type of coaching job that everybody seems to be clamoring for today in the NFL. All I can tell you is be careful what you wish for. Because if it doesn't happen right away, then you've kind of, shot it off. And then what? Then what are you left with? There's got to be a balance. And if I'm doing any interviewing, I got to hear desire, I got to hear passion, I got to hear definitive ideas on how to fix this roster and how to get performance out of players. I got to hear definitive ideas on that. And I'm guessing ownership probably does too. Claire in the UK. Hey, Claire, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Ricky. Hey, Maureen.
Hey, girl.
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Everything's great. It's cold here. We're going to get snow this week, I think.
Is everything awesome?
Oh, yeah, well, it's January. What can you say? I mean, it's, hurry up and, get here spring. Hurry up and get here draft. Hurry up and get here something, anything, right?
Oh, I like winter, though. I'm crazy, but
yeah,
still.
Right. Believe me, I get it. It's all right, so who should be the next coach and why?
See, if you ask me today, I'm saying Mike Vrabel. Now, if you ask me tomorrow, I might say Ben Johnson.
Yeah. So you're kind of going back and forth then, right?
Yeah, this is it, because, Eldridge said one of my points for me, bless him, and we don't always agree, but the Wolf thing, the Elliot Wolf thing, I have nothing against the guy, but my fundamental underlying concern is a big issue is draft. And that are the people that were majorly involved in that still staying the same? Is it like Elliot Wolf? Because wasn't he like sort of VP of scouting back in 20 to 23? So does this roll on to any draft connection? And that's the thing that worries me. So if he's the one with his fingers in the draft pies, I'm concerned about him staying. But that's sort of a separate entity, because I know it's different departments and stuff. When it comes to head coaching, I'm like a lot of people. The Vrabel thing, I like we're looking at a guy who's got plenty of experience. He's got plenty of stability. He's got that kind of dominant personality, and he'll keep the guys in line, and he's already liked by people, that sort of thing. I like that. But there is also that of, but if you don't go down the Johnson route, you may be missing out on something that's new and fresh and that you need in the building, but you aren't going to know. He's some of that unknown entity because he's never been a head coach. And I do today as we are recording this on Wednesday,
Okay.
still feel bitten by the inexperience that Jerod Mayo had. And I know none of it was his fault. He really needed to have been a DC before he was a head coach. He really should have been pushed up to DC sort of now, and we should have had either still had Belichick or had a different head coach. He really needed that experience, and it was completely evident, and that's why he's not here anymore. One of the reasons why he's not there anymore, sort of thing. So I'm swaying towards the Vrabel thing because it really feels like a 50-50, doesn't it? It feels
It
like
does.
like you said, the old, stable, sort of dependable, and he was a tight end sort of kind of ish. So I like that. Or he played tight end a bit. So I always like that. If there's a tight ended bit somewhere, I'm going to fall for it. So there's that element for him. But Ben Johnson's got the offense situation.
Yeah.
And the new way of doing football, the tight pants as they like to say on PU and stuff
Sure.
like that. So I can totally see it. But I think if I've got to put my chip in a jar today, you're getting it in the Vrabel pot.
Yeah, I kind of agree with just about everything you said there. To be honest with you, I mean, I'm leaning that direction. I wouldn't be crushed if it were Ben Johnson, but to me right now, I mean, because I liked Jerod, and I thought that it was a job that he potentially could have grown into had he already had a better roster with which to deal with. So we know that didn't happen. It may not happen right away. So given what we now have, who is the better coach to deal with the roster that we have? And to me,
the brain drain on the coaching.
Yeah.
So sorry to talk over you. There wasn't only a head coaching change, was there? There was a brain drain since sort of McDaniels went and took a load of people with him.
Yeah.
It never really got properly replaced.
Yes.
Spots never really got filled. So then Bill disappears.
Right, and I think part of that, by the way, sorry to interrupt, but part of that is because of Bill. He didn't hire, I don't think, well after those guys left. As we all know, the whole Matt Patricia fiasco set this team back years.
They're missing players, like you said, the roster. They're missing those kind of guys, but they're also missing the personnel guys, the coaching guys. It just feels like everything is depleted, and they tried to fix it in 1 year with lots of very, very new people, i.e. Covington being brought up to DC, Steve Belichick going, Mayo being the head coach, bringing in a new guy in AVP who I'm glad hasn't been a scapegoat yet, because I think he's done really well with the quarterbacks. Not sure if he's the play caller. I think he's more the quarterback guy, but that's another topic as well. But it just feels like that room was so depleted. We're blaming the roster, but the whole building was missing a load of people, just in general.
Yeah.
And you've got to fill. There's still a lot to fill, and it isn't only going to be the draft. It's a big process to get this building, filled and stacked and backups and all that kind of thing. They're really, really depleted on people, full stop, not just players, in my opinion.
Sure. Yep. No, I think your opinion's good. When are we going to hear you do a podcast next time?
A Claire perspective it's still in the off season, so a new episode's going to be soon. They're going to be a little bit further apart, obviously, as most shows are now in the off season, because there is technically a little bit less to talk about. But A Claire Perspective will be back on your podcast airwaves, as they say, or don't say, maybe just me, soon. And Pat's Procrastination, although it used to be a game recap rap show on YouTube through the Pat's Propaganda, we're still doing off-season. So rather than game recap rap, we're just doing like off-season topics.
Nice.
So we'll still be back quite regularly. So you'll find me on YouTube and in, as they like to say, all the places that you find your podcast with A Claire Perspective. So
Nice.
I'm really sorry, folks. I'm not going away.
I wouldn't expect you to. I wouldn't expect you to go anywhere. I know where we can find you. It's always good to hear you. And Happy New Year to you, my friend.
Thank you. Happy New Year. Lovely to hear your voice. And hey, Maureen, take care of yourself.
Hey, girl.
You got it. Thank you, Claire. Appreciate you. This reminder, it's confidence. Important to have when you're on the road. With Bridgestone tires on your car, truck, SUV, or minivan, you're riding on tires you can trust. Bridgestone tires are engineered to give you peace of mind so you can focus on enjoying the journey. And whether you're on your morning commute, a cross-country road trip, or a relaxing Sunday drive, Bridgestone tires will be with you wherever life's roads may lead. Bridgestone, solutions for your journey, available now at Sullivan Tire.
A real woman could stop you from drinking.
It has to be a real big woman.
It's time to go around the NFL with football guru Russell Baxter
Now on, your name is Flounder.
on Patriots Playbook.
Flounder?
And the one and only flounder, Russell Baxter joined us here in the Patriots Playbook. Russell, we didn't really get the kind of Black Monday that I think we've been used to getting over the last few years. Anyway, I mean there are 6 jobs presently open in the NFL, but were you curious as to how that kind of all unfolded here without a ton of activity on Monday?
Well, first things first, and I pop on here and, oh my God, I didn't realize Eldridge was going through puberty. And then I realized it was Claire. Okay?
Gosh.
It's the boom, the usual dad joke.
Yeah.
Black Monday got an early start this year throughout the season. And we keep seeing this lack of patience, which is it's going to play into what we're going to talk about here, I'm sure. The lack of patience by owners or general managers, whoever calling the shot with their teams when it comes to coaches. Obviously, Jerod Mayo is front and center of that, one and done. Antonio Pierce, can't really call that one and done because he was 1.5 and done for Antonio Pierce. So it's still mystifying because, if you remember, the Raiders wanted somebody before that, and Mark Davis opted not to bring him. This time he decided to stick with his gun. Rich Bisaccia. Remember, who took over for Gruden, and they got into the playoffs, and then Mark Davis went into a different direction. This time he listened to Max Crosby and so on, and they kept Antonio Pierce as the interim, gave him the full-time job, and still let him go. My point is, Frank Reich in Carolina, just a year ago, I think he lasted 11 games.
Yeah.
And they pulled the plug on him. Urban Meyer, a lot of different circumstances. It's hard to compare things. Urban Meyer didn't last his first season in the NFL. They pulled the plug on him. And I think you're seeing it more and more as teams look for instant satisfaction, and you just get this sense now that owners are becoming more and more proactive with their teams. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. I know they own the team, but I would certainly hope to think that, they're collaborating with people and talking with people who are really full-time football people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you hear these stories about the Jets. What's the common denominator of the Jets not being in the playoffs since 2010? Well, that would be Woody Johnson. It's not Aaron Rodgers.
Yep.
And the Dallas Cowboys missed the playoffs this year. They haven't been to the NFC title game, much less the Super Bowl, since 1995.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the common denominator there? So the Raiders go through head coaches like I go through Fritos. Okay, they haven't won a playoff game since 2002.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just, and yet the steady organizations who have a plan, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Steelers, the Packers, it's hard to win in this league. We've now seen the San Francisco 49ers go to the Super Bowl, twice in a 5-year span and miss the playoffs after they went to the Super Bowl both times.
Yeah, that's right. The adage that I like to use is, no matter how bad you think you got it, somebody else has always got it worse.
That's very true. And again, it's I was a little disappointed in the Mayo dismissal, because if you get into that habit of one and done, and keep on finding the right place. I mean, I think the Detroit Lions got tired of that. Okay.
Right, which is how Dan Campbell kept his job. Sure.
Right. Well, he was 3-13-1, and then I think he was 1-6 the following year.
Yep.
But he set a tone, and they stuck with a plan. okay? And not everybody comes out of the gate winning all the time, okay? I mean, think about this. It's a different way to look at it, okay? Bill Belichick obviously was an experienced coach when he took over the Patriots. He was in Cleveland, took them to the playoffs in 1994. Everything fell apart in 1995. I really don't blame that on Belichick. A lot of people hold it against him, but it's hard to coach a football team when the football team leaves, if people understand what I'm talking about, okay? There's no football in Cleveland for 3 years. The Browns became the Ravens. So I think he took a lot of being the fall guy for that. But think about this in a weird way. Bill Belichick's first 3 years in New England, he missed the playoffs twice.
Yep.
Okay, they were 5-11 his first year, and I believe, if I remember right, the Patriots were either 3-0 or 4-0 in 2002, fell to 9-7 and missed the playoffs after they won that first Super Bowl. So patience is a pretty good thing in this business, okay? And like I said, I was a little disappointed. Now, did they do this because they might be interested in a certain linebacker, former sure-handed tight end fill-in to fill the role? I think what happened here, this is, again, my own thoughts. I think Robert Kraft and whoever else saw what happened with the Houston Texans. They brought in a guy who was a defensive mind. They brought in a guy who was a former standout player with the organization. And I think they thought they could duplicate what the Texans did in turning their franchise around. And it didn't happen. And they decided to do one and done. And again, I think it's very disappointing. And hopefully Jerod Mayo winds up. Maybe he goes to another team, becomes defensive coordinator. Maybe hone his skills even a little more. But I was a little shocked that came down and so fast on Sunday too.
Yeah, I agree with that. I hope that Jerod gets the chance, because I think he deserves that chance to sort of rehab not only his reputation, but also, to learn a little bit more, to get another shot at this, because I think, under the right circumstances, he certainly can be a good head coach in the NFL. But, I would say, unlike the Houston situation that you just alluded to, I would certainly question, or at least wonder how overall, what the overall strength of that roster was. And the Patriots, what they did in setting up the roster here for Jerod, it clearly paled in comparison, I think, to even ultimately what Houston had at the time.
Well, there's no question about that. To me, that's a little bit of a different subject. The one thing you noticed, and it's happened the 2 years that DeMeco Ryans has been there, they have had no problem bringing in free agents. No, it's almost people want to play for DeMeco Ryans. Okay, we saw that his very first year, because at one time they were signing a bunch of free agents, and they were just signing names, for lack of a big word. And then some big names started to come. You think about a division champion, John, this year, who was able to add Joe Mixon, Joe Mixon and Stephon Diggs, who they got in trades, okay, and got them from contending teams. All right, they lost a couple of linebackers. They got Daniel Hunter for their pass rush. And listen, Jonathan Greenard had a great year for the Texans. He's going for the Vikings. He's going to the Pro Bowl. But they had no problem adding to a very young and talented roster. You're 120% correct. New England's roster pales in comparison to what the Texans have. So that's a big of a part of a problem, and
Sure.
That's something they need to take a closer look at as well. Listen, I know Bill Belichick got bashed for a lot of his drafts, especially in the latter years and so on, but at the same time, he had some. It's interesting. I was thinking about that this as I was listening to Claire, and I'd be curious to get your thoughts on this. Bill Belichick, throughout most of his tenure, for lack of a better word, and some of it had to do with money, knew when to move off from a player.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like that was the case the last couple of years he was there.
with the exception of Tom Brady.
With the exception of Tom Brady, who moved on by himself.
Yeah. Well, but he also moved on because I think it was well known that Bill wanted to move on, and so
absolutely. That's why Jimmy Garoppolo wound up in San Francisco.
Right.
And that actually, he felt like at the time that it was time for Tom to move on. That's why Richard Seymour was in the Hall of Fame, and Deion Branch, who was Super Bowl MVP. Again, some of that had to do with them asking for Mike. Lawyer Malloy. Who's ever going to forget the Lawyer Malloy game?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but it didn't seem like that in the latter years. Like I said, Brady obviously the exception, but and that's why I kind of question whether Robert Kraft has more of a hand in the roster and personnel than maybe some people perceive.
Yeah, I'd say that's entirely possible. And will be discussed, I think, in fairly short order when the candidates start rolling in here. All right, before we lose track of it, we do have, obviously, the postseason coming around, something that the Patriots are striving to get back to. And, of the games that are involved, well, we have Kansas City and Detroit with the byes in the respective leagues. So let me ask it to you this way. Number one, of the two teams that have the byes, which is most likely, in your opinion, to not reach the championship? And I'm talking about the conference championship, not necessarily the Super Bowl. Most likely to not reach the conference championship. I'll start with that one. What do you think?
Oh, obviously Kansas City has all the experience. But I want to tell you something. When Detroit, as battered as they were, came back on that Monday night and beat the 49ers, I know the Niners aren't what they are, okay? But they could have very easily let that game go and still beat the Vikings for the NFC North Championship.
Yep.
And the number – so it wasn't a meaningless game for them. And I think that's the impressive thing about the Lions. I don't like picking either one of these teams. I mean, you don't win 15 games in this league very often.
No, you don't.
Although I will point out, I want to say the last 4 or 5 teams to win 15 games in a season, none of them won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think that's a concern. I think that's definitely a concern. I think that's a factor, too, because sometimes they kind of go in on their laurels, and I'm of the opinion that the bye sometimes isn't the best thing to have. I think we've certainly seen that in the college football playoff this year, have we not?
There's no question about it, and we have seen coaches and organizations, for lack of a better word, butcher the bye. Okay?
Yeah.
I personally think you go back to 2019 with the Ravens when Lamar Jackson had his first MVP year. I thought they did not handle the bye whatsoever. They rested players. They had another week, and then Derrick Henry goes in there and rolls them in Baltimore. Okay?
Yeah.
I think Bill Polian and the Colts a couple of times let that get away. 2005 when they won their first 13 games, kind of they almost rested people and were for about a month. And then Pittsburgh went in there in the divisional round and upset them and so on. So there's a fine line between rest and rust. That is not original, I know. And it'll be interesting to see just how this goes. Now, obviously, Kansas City's a little more experienced. It's their 10th straight trip to the playoffs, okay, which is one short of New England's record. Okay, the Lions are in the playoffs in back-to-back years. I think since you have to go back to the 90s, okay, and they're having an absolutely franchise year with wins and back-to-back division titles for the first time ever, and they've never won 13 games in a season, much less 15. So they did not have the bye last year. They had to play right away, okay, and so it'll be interesting to see how Dan Campbell handles this. But these days in the NFL, everybody has a bye. And I know this might sound like a little goofy thing, but the Lions are kind of used to playing a couple different byes because they play on Thanksgiving every year, which is an extra week and a half. And obviously they've got some Thursday night games this season as well. I will say that division this year was incredible. Okay, Minnesota is going to the playoffs as a 14-win wild card, which is unprecedented. Okay, the fact that the Lions went 6-0 in the division should tell you a lot about the caliber of competition they've played this season.
No question. No question.
So I'll say the Chiefs to answer your question.
Yes, and I was just going to say I was kind of leaning that way myself, to be honest with you. All right, and then the other question I have for you today, and again, of all the other first-round games, you got the Chargers and Texans, you got Pittsburgh at Baltimore, you got Denver at Buffalo. In the NFC, Green Bay at Philly, Washington, Tampa, Minnesota at the Rams. A real dark horse. And I'm going to give you a dark horse that probably nobody is thinking of, but just something tells me about the makeup of that team. I think that game could be, even though they lost to this team previously this year, I kind of like the Redskins, and as an old-time Cowboy fan, that kills me to say that.
Well, I could see that. The one thing we have seen out of Tampa is a lot of firepower from Baker Mayfield, but they struggled with the Saints last week.
Yeah.
And they struggled defensively at times. And when they went on that midseason 4-game losing streak, teams had no problem moving the football against them. Let's keep something in mind. They won the division, but got swept by the Falcons. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the one thing in their favor is they have played a lot of teams that are in the playoffs this year. I mean, obviously not from their own division, but they played Baltimore earlier in the year. They played Washington. They played Philadelphia. They played Detroit. They beat the Lions. There were only 2 teams that beat the Lions. Okay? But defensively, I get that. I had a different one. I'm keeping an eye on the Los Angeles Chargers.
Okay.
And I say that because of their physicality and the fact that – here's one for you, John. The last time the Chargers gave up the fewest points in any league was 1961 when they were in the AFL.
I love that. Now, that's a Russell Baxter stat right there.
Yeah. Well, I was watching them all year because if you remember last season how bad they were on defense.
Yeah.
But, you know, listen, this is here's one, and this will be in my column coming up and so on. And this is hope for teams, by the way. I'll just give you some hope. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many teams lost their first 2 games this year and made the playoffs? 9 teams lost their first 2 games this year. How many do you think are in the playoffs?
Out of losing the first 2? You know what? I don't know. I'd have to go back through it and look it, but I would say I'd say at least 3.
3. That's exactly right. The Ravens, the Broncos, and the Rams were all 0-2.
0-2, and they all into the postseason.
Right. Now, I bring this up because we started the 17 playoff format in each conference in 2020.
Yeah.
Okay? So this is the 5th year of that. The previous 4 years combined, 2-0 two 0-2 teams made the playoffs. This year, 3 alone.
Wow. So in the previous 4 years, only 2 0-2 teams made it?
Yeah. The Bengals in 22 and the Texans in 23.
Wow.
Were the only ones. Plus, here's something that really caught my eye. Washington won 8 more games than they did a year ago.
Great turnaround. Yeah.
The Chargers won 6 more games.
Yeah.
Than they did a year ago.
Yeah.
The Vikings won 7 more games than they did a year ago. Some big, big jumps. Now, just so you know, none of them are near the NFL record, which was set twice. The Colts went from 3-13 to 13-3, from 98 to 99, and the Dolphins went from 1-15 to 11-5, from 2007 to 2008. So, in other words, a 10-game swing.
10-game plan. Wow. Russell, my friend, it's been great having you with us this season. It's been great having you a part of this program for now completing 24 years of this show, as long as you have. And I look forward to visiting with you, as I'm sure a lot of fans look forward to hearing from you with your insight and your historical perspective on the NFL each and every time we get a chance to do this. But from the bottom of my heart, my friend, thank you very much for spending time with us this season. Happy New Year to you.
Well, Happy New Year to you. It's something I really look forward to every week. I love the format of what we're able to do. We stray off course, which may be my favorite thing to do. But you embody what I think sports talk should be.
I appreciate you.
It's a conversation. It's not someone yelling in your face and telling you you're wrong.
Appreciate that. Thank you. You're wrong. You're wrong.
I never get crap, John.
I know. All right. Enjoy the playoffs, my man. I'm sure we will talk soon.
I'm sure we will too.
Thank you, buddy. The one and only @Bax Football Guru on X. I've got about 2 minutes left of the program. I want to say hello to Trey in Memphis. Hi, Trey. Trey, are you there? He might have given up on us because I kept him on hold. Trey, I saw you. I acknowledge you. I love you, brother. Thank you. Appreciate you picking up the phone and giving us a call. Let me finalize things by saying, if you want to mix things up in the new year, Bob's Discount Furniture has tons of endlessly customizable modular styles like the brand new Posh sectional featuring a sleek, elevated design, signature Bobopedic memory foam comfort, super plush upholstery, and count them, 14 accent pillows included. Miss Robin would love that. Now, that's versatile, so stop in and stock up for the new year at Bob's Discount Furniture, the official furniture store of the New England Patriots. And, of course, Bud Light is easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light is the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. Thanks to Evan, thanks to Karen Guregian, thanks to Russell Baxter. Most of all for this season, thanks to Matt the Marine. For producing and helping me put this thing together so we can bring this information, this talk format to you here in the Patriots Playbook. It's a little different from what, some of the other shows do here on Patriots.com radio. I acknowledge that. It's worked for a long time. Hopefully it'll work again at some point in time in the future. But thank you for taking your time to spend a little time with us, whether or not you tune in on the live version or you're listening, watching back in on the podcast version. I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot. We'll find out what the next move is for the New England Patriots coming up in very short order. All right? And then I'm sure we'll all be talking about it one way or the other. Until next time, so long, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.